Hi everyone and welcome to Classic Gamer 74. I'm your host, Anthony Gamer, and today we're going to discuss exclusives for the Colecovision. Before we get started, I have a special celebrity guest host today. Many of you that were around in the 80s probably remember these cute little creatures. They were called Chubbles. They kind of looked like Ewoks, except for they were a lot less annoying and people didn't actually hate them. They were cute little cuddly toys. Now, they would sometimes speak. Usually it was a change in light or some other stimuli that would cause them to chirp, kind of similar to what a guinea pig does. Observe. Cool, huh? Anyway, so Chubbles is going to help me out today with the episode, and we are going to discuss some exclusive games for the ColecoVision. You ready to start? Now, luckily for you, I speak Chubbles, so I will have a translation down here at the bottom of the screen for you guys to see when Chubbles makes a comment while we're discussing, okay? The ColecoVision was released in August of 1982. However, it was discontinued only 3 years later, in October of 1985. During its short time on the market, it did have 145 games. It was created to be direct competition to the Atari 2600 and the Intellivision. However, it was not able to compete with either one of them, as those systems lasted for several more years. One advantage that the ColecoVision had over the other two systems was that the quality of the games were generally very similar to the arcade games that they were ported from. And a majority of the games that were released for the ColecoVision were actually ports of arcade games. One thing that Coleco was criticized for, and I believe justifiably so, was the fact that several of the games that they would port from an arcade would be 10 times better on the ColecoVision than on either the Atari 2600 or the Intellivision. So therefore it was pretty easy to tell when you saw the screenshots on television which system this game was being ported for. For instance, here is Coleco's Vision version of the arcade classic Burger Time. And here is the Atari 2600 version. I rest my case. Although the graphics were much better on the ColecoVision than on the Atari 2600, the Atari 2600 lasted many, many years longer than it did. Why do you think that is? Let me know in the comments section below. I'd like to hear your viewpoint on that. Now let me just say for the record, for those of you that like to give me a hard time, I do not hate the ColecoVision. It just took me years to get used to it because I had grown up with an Atari 2600, as most of my friends did, and it would be several years until I actually got to play a ColecoVision. My only true criticism of the ColecoVision is the controller. Now, I was used to a controller that looked like this. And so then I had to get used to a controller that looked like this. Yeah, it wasn't easy, that's for sure, but after a while I pretty much got used to it. Although I do have to admit that the Coleco Super Action controller was pretty cool and way ahead of its time. Regardless, there were some games that were exclusive for the ColecoVision, whether they were ports of arcade or some third-party games. There were some games that were made just for the ColecoVision that were never released to other game systems, officially. Years later, of course, many homebrew programmers have made their own versions of these games. So let's check out a couple games that were exclusively made just for the ColecoVision. First one on today's list is Pepper 2. That was a port of an arcade game by Exidy from 1983. Okay, now the story in this game is that you are Pepper, and you are an angel, and you're trying to zip up these particular areas. When you zip up a segment, it fills up and you are awarded points. Now you have two enemies coming after you, Roaming Eyes and the Whippersnapper. In the ColecoVision version, they're called Zipper Rippers. And they unzip all uncompleted and zip segments by moving over them. The only defense you have is to get away from them or try to pick up the pitchforks, which turn you into a devil for about 4 seconds. Oh, I agree with you totally, Chubbles. I had a lot of fun playing this game. I had a friend of mine that had a ColecoVision, and I went over to his house and played this. And I'll tell you what, I went to the arcade a couple times and tried to find Pepper 1. I guess the game must have been pretty rare, because I never did find the darn thing. Yeah, I know that. I was just trying to be funny. I take it didn't work. Anyway, a good large percentage of people that I've talked to and interviewed over the years that had a ColecoVision agree with me and Chubbles that this probably had to be one of the best games on the system. It is kind of a shame that it wasn't ported out to the other systems. However, I've heard a very reliable rumor that a certain programmer friend of mine is planning on porting it out to the Atari 2600. So when I hear more about it, I will let you guys know. Anyway, so again, this is Pepper 2 by Exidy from 1983. Speaking of Pepper 2, that reminds me of today's trivia question. I know we haven't done one of these in a while. What is the name of the song that plays when the game Pepper 2 first starts? You think you know the answer? I bet you know it, don't you? Okay, well, let's see if you're right at the end of the video. Alright, the next game on our list is Antarctic Adventure. This was created by Konami in 1984. Alright, now in this game, you are guiding this cute little penguin around Antarctica and trying to get him to different bases that are ran by different countries from around the world, such as New Zealand, Australia, and the United States. On the way, you have to look out for these seals that pop up out of holes, and the holes themselves, but you can actually pick up all kinds of goodies like the flags and the fish for extra points. And remember, you have a limited amount of time to make it to these bases, so watch out for those seals and those holes as they kind of slow you up on your way. I think the furthest I ever made it was to the 6th base. Oh yeah, you're not the first one to make that observation, Chubbles. A lot of other people have compared this to Turbo. Now, Turbo was also another game that was exclusive for the ColecoVision, but I'm not going to be reviewing it here, as I'm going to be reviewing games that I like, and Turbo is a game I don't really particularly care for. Alright, you got me there. To be honest with you, I wasn't really very good at racing games when I was a kid, but I got better as I got older. Anyway, this game was not actually ever ported to any video game system in the United States. It was only ported to the Famicom in Japan. But regardless, this is Antarctic Adventure from 1984 by Konami. Alright, next up we have Space Panic by Universal from 1983. Alright, now in this platform game, the object is to lure these aliens into holes that you dig and then smack them out of the hole and off the screen. And you have a limited supply of oxygen in order to do this with. Believe it or not, this game wasn't really a big success, as this was considered the first digging and climbing game. So at the time, programmers felt that it was kind of something that was new to a lot of gamers. However, this concept would work years later with such games as Lode Runner and Mr. Deuce Castle. Well, it is a platform game just like Donkey Kong. The thing is, this game actually predates Donkey Kong, as the arcade game came out in 1980. And the programmer actually went as far as to call this the granddaddy of all platform games. So, as to where platform games were kind of a new concept at that time, now, and actually a few years later, they became the norm. So, kind of this game was ahead of its time, but as like with other games, sometimes it wasn't appreciated until years later. So, this is Space Panic from 1983. Now, next up, we have BC's Quest for Tires from 1983 by Sierra Online. Now, I know what some of you are probably thinking. Sierra Online, isn't that the game company that made all the Quest games? Well, yeah, they are. And they are probably most known for their computer games. However, every once in a while, they did step out of that and make some pretty cool platform or side-scrolling games. Now, in this game, which is based on the comic strip, you are actually playing the role of Thor, the caveman, trying to rescue your girlfriend, known as Cute Chick, from a dinosaur. And you are using this unicycle to try to get there. This game actually won several gaming awards, including Colecovision Game of the Year. So definitely a game that I really enjoyed playing, but only discovered a couple years ago. It can get quite frustrating, though, as the jump on this game, you have to press up, which, you know, most of us are used to hitting the fire button in order to do that. But anyway, very unique game, but, you know, quite fun, you know, once you get the hang of it. So this is BC's Quest for Tires from 1983 by Sierra Online. And our final game for today is Tarzan from 1984 by CBS. Alright, in this game you play the famous Tarzan as you are trying to rescue your 8 friends from these bad guys and from evil gorillas. Kind of a fun game. Actually, it's quite fun. It's just a lot of people have a hard time with it because it's not really one of those games you're going to be able to just jump right into. You kind of you have to read the book. If you don't read the book, you're not going to know what you're doing. Yeah, you got a point there. It does remind you a lot of Pitfall, although to be honest, it goes a little deeper than that, as it's not just your typical treasure hunting side-scroller game like Pitfall was. Very imaginative, and I believe this is one of the most underrated games on the ColecoVision itself. So this is Tarzan from 1984 by CBS. Well, I heard rumors a few years ago that they were actually planning on porting that Tarzan game to the Atari 2600. I don't know if that's true or how far they got. The only thing I've ever seen is a mock-up box, so it's hard to say. The video game crash of 83 and 84 pretty much affected all video game systems, so, you know, it is possible. Okay, so let's answer today's trivia question. What is the name of the song that is heard when the game Pepper 2 first starts? You think you know the answer? Well, it's Funeral March of a Marionette by Charles Gounod, which of course is the theme song for Alfred Hitchcock Presents. Good evening. I thought that was pretty good myself. Well, that brings us to the end of today's episode of Classic Gamer 74. I hope you all enjoyed it. If you did, don't forget to give us a great big thumbs up and subscribe if you haven't already. Do you know of any games that were exclusive to a retro video game system? Well, let us know about it in the comments section below, and who knows, it may become the subject of a later episode. Next episode, which is going to be our big 50th, it's hard to believe I've been doing this for 50 episodes, we're going to be discussing part 3 of our Atari 2600 prototypes. Well, until next time, this is Anthony Gamer, and this is my friend Chubbles. Say goodbye, Chubbles. And we will see all of you in the next episode. Until then, have a great day. Bye.